Greetings, Grapple fans. I'm JP with that rarest of things on Grapple, an interview. And who better to have as a guest today than the current undisputed British heavyweight champion, Michael Oku. How are you, mate? How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. I'm doing good, man. JP, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm surviving, getting through to the weekend because obviously it's a massive weekend for you, much bigger weekend than what I've got. But I know we've got a show and stuff coming up as well. But we might as well jump straight into it. Or jump straight into. I
Sure.
don't know if you've heard. There's been a little bit of scuttlebutt going around, um, and a few rumours of you signing with AEW. And what are your thoughts on those?
My honest thought is it's very cool that those rumors exist and that they can be believed. Um, AEW is a company that I would like to work for, um, and it's cool that I've had a lot of experiences working with a lot of their talent or working close to them, if you include the Jericho Cruise as well. Uh, Wembley Stadium, being a British, and just being anybody, the chance to perform at Wembley Stadium would be a really, really cool thing. And that's something that I would love to take off and do. But at the moment, it's something that I'm open to and nothing more, nothing that is confirmed. Of course, that'd be my answer if I was confirmed, because everybody lies in wrestling and keeps secrets anyway. But I'm putting it out there. That is what I'm saying, so that I've said it.
Okay, that sounds fair enough at this point. I mean, and obviously, you tend to think of contract signings almost being like football transfers. You don't say anything until stuff actually happens and is in play. So there's always going to be like a kind of a healthy rumor mill that surrounds that as well. I did want to ask you if you did hypothetically go to AEW, what would be someone you've always wanted to work with and you haven't had a chance to who is over there?
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, like blue sky dream would be Brian Danielson, just because I think I'm at the moment where I think he is the greatest wrestler of all time. I think I'm in that mindset right now. I think it's time that we all just say he's the greatest wrestler of all time. So naturally, because he's there, that would be great. The other person would be Christian Cage, just one of my favorite wrestlers. Has been when growing up, still is now. So if I'm able to do something with Christian Cage, that would be incredible.
Where do they rank in your top five list? I was going to come to this in a little
Damn
bit, but in
it.
terms of your top five wrestlers of all time, I'm assuming both of them are on there.
Um, it is. My list is The Rock number one, Chris Jericho number two, Christian Cage number three, and then Danielson is there. I'm always putting him like four and five between him and Punk. They just
Okay.
keep swapping. Those are the ones that keep swapping. The other three are pretty much a lock. Those keep three swapping. But like as in my objective opinion, which is an oxymoron, I feel like Brian Danielson is the greatest wrestler of all time.
Did you follow him in Ring of Honor? Was that something you were watching when you were younger at all? Was it later years WWE?
What was it called? The Wrestling Channel. Yeah, I was catching a bit of Brian Danielson on the Wrestling Channel, catching Ring of Honor there. So I was very much aware of who he was. Then there was this weird. This is very a deep cut. There was this weird TNA versus ROH parody video game that was made through No Mercy that someone made online, and I played the hell out of that. Uh, so I was a big fan of Danielson and watching his stuff. And then when I went to uni, I was able to discover someone just compiled his entire title reign, including the Kamala match. So I just went through a deep dive of not a lot of studying and a lot of watching his entire title reign. So I was completely locked in on Danielson until then, until
Oh,
even before he signed.
and do you find that you'll do you end up going back and studying when you're almost like a kind of like revision stuff when you're at home where you just think I'm going to sit down, I'm going to watch this particular wrestler tonight, and I'm going to study them and see what they do. And do you find yourself doing that?
I do that too much. I do that too much. I put so much time away, and I'm watching wrestling more to study and less so to enjoy it. Which I guess that's what happens. You become less of a wrestling fan and more of a wrestling student. So if I am watching an AEW, if I'm watching WWE, I'm seeing what I can learn from it. I tell you what though, actually, with WWE recently, I'm able to kind of just step back and like enjoy it. When I went to Mania, earlier this year in Philly. I was there watching as a fan. I wasn't, what can I learn about whatever, pacing, or I was just watching The Rock do stuff. So that
Yeah.
wasn't the case. But yeah, but I definitely study as much as I can from different areas and different wrestlers.
Do you find yourself like watching weekly wrestling TV, or is it a combination? You're going back into kind of mixing and matching between sort of past rather than, because it's difficult to keep up with. I can tell you that.
Yeah, no, 1,000,000%. So Dynamite is the one show I watch every week consistently, and then I'm watching. If something cool happens on Raw, I usually then like really cool. Then I watch the whole show. If not, for some weird reason, WWE puts like either the best match or the most talked about segment in full on their YouTube channel, which is great for me. So that I just catch it there. But like that's I do try my best to do that, and then when there's big tournaments such as the G1 Climax, I was following the G1 Climax. Just that's something I'm able to also enjoy whilst study at the same time. Something like New Japan, I'm making sure that I'm knowing what's happening, keeping my finger on the pulse as well.
Yeah, it can, and it can be obviously a lot more difficult depending on promotions as well. Because we'll get on to CMLL in a bit, but I imagine trying to kind of being able to watch CMLL. I mean, you pretty much got to be a subscriber, haven't you? Unless you're going to be sent videotapes and the like. But I mean, was that easy for you to research and study before you went and worked for them?
Oh yeah, so I wanted to do it free. I wanted to research it by finding all the freebies as possible. But CMLL, they're very strict with what they put out there. It's
Oh yeah.
only highlights on their YouTube channel. So I did when I knew I was going, I was watching pretty much everything on their YouTube channel, like subscribed for 2 months, just to know everyone, to know who were the biggest stars. I didn't really know who I'd be wrestling other than Angel De Oro. Like when I was defending the title, that was the main
Hmm.
person I knew. So I just wanted to get a gauge of everything and everyone, know what to expect. And then that's kind of how I went on my way. I'm like, all right, okay, I think I'll be fine.
Well, on the subject of CMLL, because it seems like you had the greatest time out there. Like, not only, I mean, the thing that always came to mind was you and Amira dancing, doing the dance along there on stage as well, which is, I'm just thinking, why doesn't more people do that? Because it's just completely set up for it. But it was Arena Mexico you worked, wasn't it? Was it Arena Mexico and Arena Coliseo you worked? Or
Yes, so it was, I wrestled at Arena Mexico, I think about 3 times, no, 4 times, which was crazy. The first time was crazy, and then to do it 3 more times was insane. I also did Arena Coliseo, and there's Arena Puebla, which Arena Puebla is about the same size as Coliseo, which it was so funny was they were warning us, being like, just so you know, it's one of our smaller buildings. Capacity is like 6,000. It's like 6,000. It's like, oh, let me show you some of our smaller buildings. Come to the Priory Centre in St. Neots, and you'll know what I'm talking about. But sold out because it was the Mystico 20-year anniversary. But in general, they do just generally have good houses at all their shows because Lucha Libre is so huge. Pro wrestling is so huge in Mexico that everybody and their nan loves it. So it was a great time to do all of those venues, wrestle in Rio Mexico multiple times, and yeah, time of our lives. It was felt famous. The whole embassy thing just happened. It felt like, oh, I'm wrestling is important. I didn't know that.
oh, I mean, it's one of the things. I don't know if you ever pick up on it, but I mean, it's one of the things you see even with cartoons. Lucha Libre, and I say this with many small children in my house as well, that there's always the time when like a Cartoon Network is on and you'll see just some random references, and whether it's to wrestling, it always tends to be Lucha Libre, just the colorful nature of it. It's stuff that you see. But I have to ask you about the embassy trip. It was I'm right in thinking you were invited. Was it the deputy head of the British Embassy
Yeah.
who'd invited you a lot? How did that come about?
Whilst we were there in Mexico, I think it was Andy Quilden who messaged me being like, "Hey, Michael, hope you're doing all right. The embassy want to see you." It's like, to do what? They just want to see you because they heard that the undisputed British heavyweight champion is in Mexico, so they thought they would like to meet him. I was like, sure. I just hit in just insane how cool it was that it happened. And I was like, what is going on? Just felt, had the belt, dressed up smart, had a lovely conversation with them. The only time I had tea in Mexico was there. Had to be done. And
Was it good
yeah,
tea?
it was good tea. It was good tea. I'm an
Yeah.
Earl Grey kind of guy. I'm a
Oh,
fan of,
okay.
big fan of Earl Grey. It's a recent discovery, and I love it. So we had that, and yeah, we just got to have a nice conversation. And they came down to Fantastica Mania, where that's when I tagged with Zack Sabre Jr. So just felt so random, so cool.
Did you manage to get like sort of a bit of a break? Were you like able to stay over for a few days, do a bit of tourist stuff on the side? Did you get a chance to do that? Was it pretty much back into the grind of coming back to the UK and wrestling again?
I wrestled 6 times. I was there for 10 days in total. So there was one day where we were part of their CMLL Informer show, and that kind of took most of the day, like longer than we thought. Then the next day after that was a Thursday, which was the actual proper official. I've got nothing on, no commitments at all to do with pro wrestling, and we were planning to go and see the pyramids. We're gonna go find a swimming pool because we're in Mexico City, so it wasn't a beach, but we were gonna enjoy the weather. And on that Thursday, it decided to piss down with rain. Just like how? So perfect timing. So we the time was there to at least enjoy the city as best we can, but we couldn't do it. So it was just mostly enjoying the restaurants and the food was what we got to do.
Was that also when you ended up in Puerto Rico as well? Because I can see, I mean, this is going on your cage match as well. Was there was that you'd worked for? I'm trying to get the name of the company
Where did
up
I
here. There was
wrestle?
a Costa Rica, not Puerto Rico. My
Yes,
bad.
yes, yes. No. That's all. Yeah, that's all good. So no, Costa Rica was earlier on in the year. That was through the partnership that CMLL have with the Costa Rica promotion, the Costa Rica Wrestling Embassy, I believe,
Yep.
CWE, who also have a relationship with New Japan. It's all this, they're all linked together in some way. So because we had that link, they're interested in bringing both myself and Amira to come down, be part of their show. And that was an example of where we did indeed get a good amount of time to enjoy Costa Rica, enjoy the beach, enjoy their drinks. And really, really good time. Really, really, really lovely time in Costa Rica.
You mentioned New Japan there, and I wanted to quickly ask. You said you followed the G1. What did you make of it this year? I mean, you must have
Oh,
been also obviously made up for Zach as well.
came home. It was really cool to see Zach like after he's been there for so long, and I completely understand when New Japan they want to go with the people who they know are committed to their company. Any company should do that, but I feel like many times in New Japan they've been burned. What might be the word? People go off to other things. They have other aspirations. I assume and I believe Zach is very committed to. I'm happy with the schedule of wrestling for New Japan Pro Wrestling, the occasional AEW Forbidden Door, whatever it is, still doing RevPro. I think he's happy with how his life is at the moment. That he he's like, I'm committed. I'm going to be your guy. I've been here for long enough that you should trust that I want to be the one. So I thought he was amazing. I think him and Takeshita were the MVPs of the tournament. I think Takeshita just shone and showed that he's one of the best wrestlers in the world, as we all know he is. And that's those two anchors, I think, made the G1 really, really memorable for me this year.
It felt like, I mean, I know that there's something we're going to speak about the finale on the main spotlight show this week, but it did feel fresher, didn't it? It did feel like there was like a very much like we're moving on to like the sort of the next generation, which is always an exciting thing in wrestling, isn't it? So, I mean, has there been conversations about you? You have worked for them before, I know, obviously, like kind of like Royal Quest. Has there been conversations about you coming in? Has it ever been something that you thought, well, I want to go in?
Do you know what? There's only been one conversation of wrestling for New Japan in Japan, that as in directly to me, and that actually happened 5 years ago in 2019, before the
Okay.
pandemic. That was when they were kind of interested in having me go down there, go down to their dojo and train. And in 2019, I'm 2 years in. I'm very, very new to wrestling. That felt like the perfect place for me to go to be under their training system and go through that system. That got cut short, not just because of the pandemic, but because Andy thought he should put the cruiserweight title on me earlier than he expected. He just thought that it was time to pull the trigger earlier than he was anticipating. So he told them, just hang off for a minute. We'll sort out something with his cruiserweight title reign where it makes sense for him to then go to you guys in Japan. Then of course that's when the pandemic happened. So that was actually the last time there was a serious conversation of me knowing, oh, I'm going to Japan soon. I know that they've now been with some troubles in terms of just their finances because they were still running during the pandemic. And I think that bit them on the ass, which is a shame. So they're way more selective on who they're bringing down. Like, I think Robbie Eagles hasn't been there for ages, and I'm sure he's contracted and he's not been in Japan for a long time. So I think as they're rebuilding and as they continue to see me wrestle their New Japan guys, hopefully we can get that conversation rolling again.
Would you, because obviously the thing is, you mentioned about being obviously like cruiserweight champion in RevPro at the time, would that, how wrestling fans, you're more synonymous as working heavyweights, working that heavyweight style as well. Would you worry about going to Japan and being kind of like seen of as like, well, this is a junior division? Would you, I mean, want to be in there with the heavyweights? Which would be more comfortable for you?
That's a really good question. Sometimes I look at the junior heavyweights, I'm like, I'm not that fast. I would rather be in there with the heavyweights. There are so many of the heavyweights. Just for example, there's so many people in the G1 that I've already wrestled. We mentioned Takeshi and Zack Sabre Jr. You know, so those are two that would be great to mix it up again. Shingo, again, that was 5 years ago. I'm a different human being from the person that wrestled him 5 years ago. You know, that was wet between his ears, behind his ears. So it intrigues me in the sense that they're these wrestlers that I've wrestled. I know I can wrestle them and have good matches. I feel I could have even better matches with them now with the experience that I have now. But it does make I wouldn't be offended if they're like, now listen, you're a junior heavyweight legitimately, so you should be there with the super juniors and so to speak. That's maybe then the thing for me to be like, oh yeah, I guess I've got to eat even more and make it undeniable that I can wrestle the heavyweights.
I mean, to go on to like you're wrestling someone who is, I think of as a heavyweight in Luke Jacobs at the Copperbox. It's the big show coming up this Saturday, 24th of August at the Copperbox. It's the 12th year anniversary. What are your feelings and thoughts in the run up to that match? How much are you looking forward to it?
Is that the Copperbox in your background? Is that the Copperbox?
It is the Copperbox. This is a photo that I've stolen online behind. Wow. It's a hell of a venue, I have to say. I think it's absolutely lovely.
Yeah, it's an amazing venue. Yeah, Luke, he's the man. He's an incredible pro wrestler, and I think there's so much momentum with him, but it's been gradually building, and then it's really exploded. Arguably, it's exploded from last year at the Copperbox when he wrestled Ishii. That is really when he was able to show the world and new faces what he was all about. And so in my head, I'm probably thinking there's a chance that there were definitely loads of new fans that are watching RevPro for the first time that were there at the Copperbox last year. There's a strong chance that some of those are not watching or have not watched the RevPro show until this year's Copperbox show again, because they'll look like, oh yeah, I'm here to see All In again. Oh yeah, that RevPro show, I'll go see it. It will make sense to them if they see, oh, that guy that wrestled Tomohiro Ishii is now wrestling for the Heavyweight Championship. Perfect sense. So, and I commend Andy for giving us the having the trust in us to say, we're going to have two British homegrown talents be the main event. They can do it. Regardless of the top names that are on the card, they can do it. And if I wasn't wrestling Luke Jacobs in the main event, I wouldn't feel as confident being the main event. And that's, I guess, the best compliment I can give to him.
It's a hell of a lot of trust, isn't it? Because obviously last year you were in the semi-main against Trent Seven in a wonderful bells and whistles match. Like I say, Luke Jacobs was in there against Tomohiro Ishii. This time it's you two headlining, which, you know, you've got what would be arguably the two like best young British wrestlers in the country who are going to be like locking horns, and it must be incredibly exciting. And I suppose that leads on to a sort of another question, really, about like how do you feel about like where 1 year on from the first Copperbox, how do you feel about where British wrestling is at this point in time?
Yeah, it's exciting being that main event as well as the pressure. And there's naturally going to be nerves and pressure that come with that, and come with having to, you know, meet expectations, ideally exceed them. But to be able to do the Copperbox Arena 2 years in a row, and I've walked in as champion 2 years in a row. For me personally, is very cool. I look at how far RevPro have come. The only times I get legitimately emotional is when I think about the pandemic shows, and that we were literally wrestling in front of 0 people, and that's the first time I heard the theme music I'm using now, and then I can hear it in front of 4,000 people at the Cop Box. I was like, that's, oh wow, we actually brought it back. We brought it back, and well, exceeded before the pandemic, exceeded the boom of British Indian wrestling, because RevPro didn't run the Copper Box before the pandemic.
Yeah.
Not that they wouldn't have been able to, but the fact that we have taken that gamble and taken that risk, and there's belief that we have a good product that people will enjoy. I think it shows that the scene is, I want to say it's healthy. I want to say it is at a healthy state, which is more than so many people believed it could be after obviously everything that happened in 2020. To be, and then for me to be at the helm of that is a very, very cool feeling, a very satisfying feeling that we're here, we're doing it a second year in a row, which is, again, it's hard to do it 2 years in a row at such a big venue. The first time, there's the novelty of it being number one, so naturally there'll be intrigue and people want to be part of that, part of the happening of the first time you go to somewhere big. To do it 2 years in a row, I think we're close to 4,000, or I know that we're definitely over 3,000. I was saying when I knew we were going to the Copper Box again, I was like, if we get 3,000, that is a victory. So I say it's a victory, but let's push for an extra 1,000. Let's see what happens.
And to be honest, I mean, yeah, I knew it was over 3,000, on that way to 4,000 as well, which is a hell of an achievement when, you know, you're considering that some other shows may not be doing the attendances they did last year as well. But I mean, do you notice, I mean, in terms of for RevPro, there seems to have been like real feel good vibe about it for quite some time. And I think it's important to mention with some of those pandemic shows as well, is that it did set things in motion for where we are today. Do you always feel that way? Like the real heavy lifting was done on those pandemic shows at the Portsmouth School of Wrestling, wasn't it? Is where you did those, and it feels like it set up a lot of the roster for where they are now, where they are today.
Oh, 1,000,000%. I think you can look at those cards, and a lot of those people that were part of those cards during the pandemic are strong parts of RevPro and its roster. I mean, my first match during one of those pandemics was wrestling Ricky Knight Jr. and Kyle Fletcher, and I was teaming with Will Osprey. JJ Gale was having a lot of singles matches. One of them against Will, so many against maybe Mills and Ridgeway. He was having a few singles matches there, and now here he is wrestling Ishii this Saturday. So there was a lot of people that were building. I think Ricky Knight Jr., that was when he really showed Andy that he could be a top guy with those empty arena shows, and positioned himself in that situation, because we all pulled together and we were like, listen, we're gonna fight through how hard this is gonna be physically and mentally, and we're gonna give what we can, figure out how to do empty arena pro wrestling, and we're gonna set things in motion. And again, that's a lot of credit to Andy in terms of the things he set in motion, story wise, as well as just allowing us to continue to develop as wrestlers in those empty arena shows to this very day.
How do you feel? Do you feel that the kind of that, because obviously I always think of like RevPro as sort of by far and away like the sort of number one promotion in the UK. Do you feel? How do you feel for that's filtered down to some of the other smaller promotions, some of the smaller promotions that you work in particular?
I think I think the trickle down. I've never really actually thought about if the success of RevPro trickling down to other promotions. In my head, I was thinking about if the success of AEW and WWE are trickling down to those indie promotions. I feel like I've noticed the t-shirts way, like loads of AEW t-shirts. I remember noticing loads of Bloodline t-shirts, you know, during like especially like last year and the year before. I think that's trickling down and helping the independent wrestling scene in general because wrestling is becoming very, very popular on the mainstream or just with the market leader.
Mm.
So with Rev Pro, I think that's just one roster of good wrestlers, and then I go to other places such as North Wrestling, which I think are also doing amazing. The other side of the country, and they're packing big venues. They outdrew their biggest show that they did this year in the same venue, which is again an incredible feat. What I'm noticing are the talent of wrestlers is very, very strong on the undercurrent. Maybe more than it was beforehand. I feel like there was like a huge drop between the top guys during the boom, and then there was just a cavalcade of wrestlers who weren't up to snuff that were just hanging around but finding success because they were really, really world class wrestlers who are now champions in WWE and so forth. But I think there's a good crop of wrestlers who could just be a day away from wrestling a Rev Pro and fitting right in, and maybe a day away from going above Rev Pro to big places.
Who are some of the names we should keep an eye out of some of the younger wrestlers?
Younger wrestlers, ooh.
Or I suppose
Well,
the wrestlers who aren't in the limelight as much.
well, I mean, Jay Joshua is actually an example of someone I was thinking about. He just wrestled at Southampton Rev Pro, and that was maybe his second match in Rev Pro, and he's done amazing every time. But he's been amazing ever since then. Of course, mainly doing the Welsh circuit, Wales and Bristol. He's doing incredible things. There's Nino Bryant, who's really young, and he's off in America with Joe Lando and Danny Black, CPF, who I think Nino is someone who is so technically sound, but is one of the best high flyers there are. But if people see how good he is as a technical wrestler, people see how good he is as a talker, which I think is very important. I think they'll be blown away. Leon Cage. Leon Cage is a guy who's cropped up. He went viral because he did some crazy spring off power bomb off the ropes recently. I think he's about 17 years old, which is disgusting. And yeah.
Don't.
So, you know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and he's never, debuted for RevPro, but again, he's doing his thing in New Wave and Chaos and Attack Pro Wrestling. Those are three that are standing out to me as examples of they're not even scratched the surface in their potential or being regulars in the top promotions in the country, but they're incredible pro wrestlers.
Do you think the level of training has gone up as well then in that case? Because I mean, I when you were mentioning about like sort of young wrestlers, I think of Cameron Kai as someone who I wouldn't have heard of a year ago. If he's turned 18, I'm imagining it's pretty recently, and he's terrifying for his age. Like just how good he is. It's kind of scary.
Yeah, no, it seems like I feel like there are more training schools than they have been in the past. I could think of there's about 3 in London. There's obviously the Portsmouth School of Wrestling. I'm a trainer at the London School of Wrestling. There's Play Fight. There's I think Greg Burridge still has a school in Walthamstow somewhere. Then if you go up further up north, there's all these different promotions. There's Claw that has, which I think is next to TNT, and New Wave has I think like 3 wrestling schools, like Midlands, Cardiff, somewhere else in Wales, like Newport. There might be one that I'm missing from New Wave alone. So I really think there's been a stronger initiative to make sure that there are really good training schools and so many different trainers with different perspective, but all good at what they do. And it's encouraging more people to actually give wrestling a shot. And so because of that, because again, that's how it was back in the day. The whole, not that it was the 70s of like, you have to be invited to become a wrestler, but it was just harder to find a wrestling school. And now I think you have the pick of the litter in terms of who you want to be trained by and where you want to train. So I think that was probably the reason why you're seeing so many new faces and fresh faces and good wrestlers across the board.
Do you also find as well there's a lot of people who train for fun? It isn't they're understanding that they they may not end up headlining shows or anything else, but they enjoy the training aspect of it, and that they come along. Do you find that there's a lot more of that?
I find that a lot with the beginners course that I take at the London
Mm.
school. I just pretty much line everyone up and I say, tell me about yourself and why are you here? It's a bit of market research and it's just intriguing to know. And yeah, 9 out of 10, yeah, I want to be a wrestler. That's of course. And then there are some who are like, I'm doing this for a bit of fun. I got recommended this from a friend. Just want to come out of my comfort zone. Want to work on confidence, and some of them do really well and are very athletic and can pass that course. And then they do training, and yeah, they're just there to get their fitness up, or not having the aspirations of I'm gonna main event WrestleMania. I promise you that they're just there to learn a bit of wrestling and enjoy it. So yeah, it's as long as the environments are good. I think the training wrestling environments are the best they've ever been, and it helps facilitate people that are there to just have some fun.
Now, in terms of when you work the UK, it seems like you don't overexpose yourself and work each and every promotion up and down the land. Is that more of just a simple time constraint that there's only one of you, there's only so many places you can be at any one particular time, or is that a conscious decision you make to say, actually, I don't want, I want to be sort of grounded in these promotions. This is what's benefiting me. I mean, is that your choice?
Yes, I wanted it to be. I try my best to see how I can come off as a star on the independent wrestling scene, which isn't that easy nowadays. And it just isn't easy if you're still wrestling on the indies. I see so many people, like wrestling fans, that even though they're fans of the indies, they're still like, but that's the indies. You're an indie wrestler, which means that you are lesser than. I'm so big on perception and trying to help myself look as big a star as possible. And so what I initially attempted to do, I had a strategy of doing only RevPro for as long as possible. If you want to see me wrestle, you go to RevPro. And then I would add in the odd promotion here and there. So it became a special thing that you could see me wrestle at A North Wrestling, at, I don't know, I pretty much do a regular purpose wrestling because wrestling in a library is cool and it's not too far from where I'm living. So, but I wanted it to be a thing where, it's a rare thing to see me, like even rare thing to see me at the merch table, even if you see me at those shows, just to try and increase that. If the more scarce I am, the more special it is, and the less you take me for granted as a wrestler. Nowadays, again, if I'm adding places, I'm hoping that they're in different countries instead of it being different promotions in the same city that you can see me wrestle down the road. But with the way things are changing, and if people are willing to offer me things that are very beneficial to me, very fruitful, I'm willing to do more things now.
Do you find that it's funny you mentioned that? You mentioned about your about being experienced now having those big matches. I meant to ask you about the MJF match. How was the reception you felt from that match, and how has much changed? Has there been a lot more I suppose a lot more contact, a lot more buzz? I mean, how have you felt yourself? Because I know you did the interview with Steph straight after the MJF match, and I won't lie, you seemed knackered. Like you seemed like you were hurting all over.
It was just hot in the building. I was just
Oh,
yeah, just physically it was a lot as well. There's, man, it's when you wrestle, he's famous. you know, he's famous when it comes down to it. It was the craziest atmosphere I've ever been a part of for a match of mine. And and that, yeah, that's me saying it's more so than the matches I had with Will. It's not that Will's like there's a big drop off, but very rarely when a match is gonna start is are people just rise to their feet and they're standing. And so when they heard it was the main event and everybody's like, cool, here we go. this is what we're here for, and they're standing for my entrance. That was a rare occasion. Again, back to Shingo, that was the first time I experienced that, not for me, but for just my opponent. I had my entrance in Manchester, and like, hey guys, I'm the guy that wrestled Pac, but you won't know that because that was 2 weeks ago in London. And then when Shingo's music started to play, and everybody just got right up to his feet, because that was a few weeks removed from him and Will doing that Best of Super Juniors final, which is the best match ever. So he was a star. MJF is a star. Me being there in the ring with him definitely elevated my stocks. It elevated me full stop. And once again, new people are discovering me. New people are finding out about who I am. And I think on the whole, people were impressed with how the match went. I think, I hope AEW were impressed with it to put at least a clip of it on their show, that they weren't offended by what they saw. So yeah, it's just a lot more people want to know a bit more about me. A lot of people want to talk to me, and that's what I asked for. So I'm not complaining. It's really cool.
It is. I did notice on the clip that they used on Dynamite, they described you as your close personal friend, Will Osprey. I know. Which I did think, is that really the case? That's not really...
Yeah, I was more miffed about Fiance. I was like, I have not. I have not. No, don't put me in Excalibur on worldwide television, on Fight TV. No. ITV.
I was gonna. I mean, because obviously, like going back to the match he had. Well, thinking of the match he had with Will at Crystal Palace in particular, and just the incredible buzz. I mean, I have to ask about star ratings. We were once a star rating app. How many 5-star matches have you got now, according to Big Dave? Is he not that you're counting?
Not that I'm counting, but it's the two. It's the two matches with Will that are the five. And then, well, obviously the one this year was 6. So that's yeah, it's crazy. It's very crazy though. Like to even for him to like a match that much, that he's like, yeah, no, it's more than 5. I was told about, he was watching this year's match live, and I was told by someone who was watching it live with him and talking about it, and the guy said to him, like, easy 5-star match, like as it's happening, and then Dave said to him, no, more. I was like, that's cool. And it's such a shame that people nowadays are saying Dave's lost it. Dave's lost it when he's dishing the 5 stars to me. Why can't it be back in the day that he lost it? Why can't he be fully like of good mind and body? But no, he's lost it, and that's when he's giving me the 5 and 6 stars. I think he's perfectly mentally okay.
Although it's kind of weird, if you're going back and look at some of the old observers, he'd be giving out, like, say, Misawa ratings. It might not be the complete match. It might only be sort of like 20 minutes, half an hour of a 40-minute match, because that's what Nippon TV or would have edited it down to, which is always kind of like strange for that. I mean, do you think that's for wrestlers to make a name for themselves? Do you think actually there's an element of this where you need to show, like, this is the template for how you're going to have a match noticed in 2024? Do you think that's the way to go, where it has to have, it can't just be fundamentally sound? If you're wanting to kind of break out there has to, you need to make sure that you're putting on a spectacular of sorts. Would that be true?
I think it has to be, yeah. There needs to be, I think every wrestler who has found success, they can point to, oh, this was the match where everything changed. I can definitely point to that Will match from 2022 as a pivotal point in my career where nearly everything fell into place. More opportunities came off that, which I then had to exceed with those opportunities, of course. But I think I needed that to be the case, and I was fortunate because it was against Will Osprey. I believe Dave would pop in to watch a RevPro show that had a big Will Osprey singles match, and that would be it. So the fact that, okay, he was like, oh, I'm going to watch this match. I think he had watched the promo we'd done because it got put online for free on YouTube. So he was like, oh, I'm intrigued now. There's a story here. Cool. And then with the reach he has, him giving his stamp of approval to that degree, it will get more eyes on me, an independent wrestler. And that's all that's what the game is. You know, you're trying to get that buzz, you're trying to get those eyes on you, so that the right eyes will be on you, so that they give you the opportunities that you're looking for. So, yeah, it's more than. And I'd love for it to just be that you got to see this guy's headlock, but yeah, it's got to be more than that for sure.
With that first Will Osprey match, was that because it felt to me like that was the first big like story match? Because it was that the first time that we, it might not have been the first time, but very early on for the partnership of you and Amira being at sort of ringside as well. It felt like that was very much like it was more than just a wrestling match. There was a whole other story going on there as well. And I think your family were there that night in front row, and it had that emotional depth to it, didn't it?
Yeah, no, that was the first time that Amira was used in any way with the match. With the promo beforehand that Stephanie was there in the ring for, that was when Will gave my family and Amira front row tickets. I think it was me that told him to also mention Amira, because at the time I wasn't sure if my family were going to make it to the show. So I was like, just in case they don't say that, she will definitely be there. So definitely say her. And that one line of saying that she'll be there and your missus was enough. And it was well enough known, at least amongst the RevPro fans, that we were together. That was why she was there front row. Then it made sense to pull her, to do the stuff pulling her across the barrier, because she was watching the whole show legitimately beside my parents and beside my brother. She was watching it, and then the pull thing happens, and then we were that story there was what made people talk about it even more. My family rushing in after the loss happens just made it such a spectacle. And I think the fact that there was a little bit of belief that I actually might win, like, oh, come on, he has to win, his family's there. No, it's pro wrestling. We do disappoint people sometimes. I think that's what made it such a grandiose thing, and a thing that people were like, you have to see this match, because, like you said, the story was something else about it.
How, I have to ask, does your mum worry when you wrestle? Does she go
Yes.
into kind of classic mum worry?
Yes, absolutely. She, there's been many times where she's told me, she's messaged me and saying, hey, if you're in any kind of pain and it's too much, just quit. Just lose, just tap out, right? That's what you do, right? If it's too much pain, if you're worried you might lose, just tap out. So she is always on worry mode, but because she's seen my success, she's now worried less and less and less as time goes on.
Okay, she's not saying to you, why don't you get a job in the city? There's loads going in there. Like, do a bit of that instead. Like, make yourself the big bucks there.
She just would always. There was a time again early on. She would just ask me, "Is this what you want to do? I don't. Are you enjoying yourself?" I was like, "Mum, I'm enjoying myself." Okay, and that's the greatest thing I could hear. The fact that that's the biggest amount of support that I need, and that's all I needed.
Was your brother ever tempted to get involved? Because did you watch wrestling with him when you were kids?
Yeah. What was kind of the family that was watching wrestling, and I'm the youngest, and he's my older brother. So naturally, we would then be wrestling each other in the house. I probably can class him as my original trainer in that sense, because of how much we wrestled as kids.
Was
I
he
don't
always winning
know.
though?
Yes, absolutely. I cannot recall ever winning, because that's when it becomes a shoot. Where we
Oh
play
yeah.
around, but then when people try and win, that's when it's a bit of a tight cover. That's when the fix is in. But I don't know if he, because the thing is, the way I started, I didn't really tell my family that I was starting. I just did it, and I came back from my first wrestling session. I just like closed the door from bro's bedroom. I was like, well, I just started wrestling training, and he told me, don't cut your head open the way Simon Miller did when he did a wrestling session. And I was like,
Yeah.
of course I'm not going to do that. and that was kind of it. That was really it. So I think he would be good at wrestling. To be clear, I think he would be good at wrestling the same way I ended up being good at wrestling.
Get him involved in an angle. There we go. I don't know how your parents would react to that. I don't know if they'd be entirely happy about it. And I did want to ask you some non-wrestling questions, just stuff
Sure.
like about what you're doing. first of all, okay, what are you watching that's non-wrestling? If you're watching like streaming services, switch on Netflix or Disney Plus or whatever. What are you watching in the minute?
I wish. Oh, what did I want? I wanted to start. I'm going through It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Too many people have told me I would love it, and I was like, yeah, okay, I'll get onto it. And I only just finished season 1 now, and it is. I've cried of laughter. It's been such a long time I've cried from laughter from a TV show. So I'm having a good time doing that. There's nothing that's like properly current that I'm watching. Me and Amira would watch if there's like a really cool documentary that everybody's talking about. We're on that. There was that weird film. There was a weird film about the guy that was in someone's house, and he ended up loving Saltburn, I believe.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh boy. Oh boy. We didn't know anything about it. We just heard that it was really good, and oh my god. I've never paused while watching something to like have a moment and think about what I'm seeing, and that was the thing. And if it's not that, it's South Park. We watch reruns of South Park. We adore South Park. That is our kind of humor. Those are the main things.
It's your comfort TV. It's the stuff you can switch your head off to on an evening as well. I did know for Saltburn there was a whole thing that happened around the time. It was around a Christmas. It came out on Prime Video, and there were lots of people who were like selling it to their grandparents and stuff, like on Christmas Day, going, "Oh, well, this film looks very nice. It's about a university student in Oxford." And then they would put it on, and then they would film the responses subtly of like grandparents and the like, and then put them up. What are you listening to, music-wise? What is yours, or it could be radio?
No, so my music tastes have been poisoned by wrestling. I was in a car ride in Canada with Vaughn Vertigo, and we're driving, and he's got his music on, and he just turned to me and was like, "Has your music's been ruined? Has your music taste been ruined by wrestling too?" I was like, "Oh, so it's not just me; it's every wrestler that has likes saliva and likes 3 days grace." But as well as that, I'm tuning. I'm listening to Future. I'm listening to Kendrick Lamar. I'm a big fan of Kendrick Lamar. So it's a weird combination of those things, and then 3 Days Grace is in there. And then I realized that they're not even popular rock bands. In my head, I'm like, oh, I guess everybody loves those metal bands. And I'm like, no, they're not. It's just wrestling. So cool, wonderful.
What about ICP? You ever listen to them?
I've not listened to ICP.
Don't.
Maybe I
They're
should.
dreadful. They're dreadful.
We did it. Yeah, go ahead.
We did a show on them recently, and it's kind of that WCW Deadpool theme is possibly the high point of everything they've ever done.
Oh, really? Was it the Kurgan, the Oddities? Did they do
Oddities.
their music? Okay.
Yeah.
I've heard that song because it was in a video game. I'm pretty sure that was a good song. Oh, it was catchy. I guess it ends there.
People responded for the Oddities. I can say that much. It was a straight. Everyone was over, massively over. Wow. You're a Newcastle fan? Is that right? How did that come about? Because obviously you're from Old Street, and I'm thinking to myself, you could just walk up New North Road. There's a massive football club up there. It would be easy to get to. How did Newcastle come about?
So my dad supports Tottenham. My brother supports Man U because obviously Man U supporters are everywhere.
Yeah.
And I was just told to, I was very, very young. And I had like England jerseys, so I was fully in and tapped in about the England squad. I was just big fans of Alan Shearer and Michael Owen. And they said, hey, listen, you got to like a club too. You got to support a club. My dad was trying to indoctrinate me into Tottenham Hotspur because I had like a whole bed set, a kid's bed set, like duvets, pillowcases, Tottenham Hotspur all over it. And I was just like, actually, what club does Alan Shearer play for? Newcastle. That's the one. Didn't know what I set myself up for. I didn't know it would be. It meant that I was then decades of supporting Newcastle United, and finally
highs and lows.
They're doing okay. Oh, there's lows. I don't know about the highs, but yeah, finally they're doing decent. They're doing decent, so it's pretty cool to be supporting them, and that's why. That's why.
When you've gone to North Wrestling, have you had a chance to go along and watch a game while you're there?
I've wanted to. Myself and the promoter, we've tried to. We've said we've got to set up a date that we just go watch the game together. I need to do it because I have once in 2016. I was doing like a one-man show there. Yes. Before I started wrestling, and I said I'm going to stay an extra day. There's a Newcastle game on, incredible atmosphere. I think the score was like 4-1. I'm trying to remember who we were playing. Might have been Aston Villa. And yeah, I was like, perfect game to go to. And yeah, it was amazing to actually finally go to St. James's Park, but I need to go again for sure.
Because they're crazy for it. You mentioned one man show. Got to ask you very quickly: is that comedy you were doing?
No, it was acting. So I was doing a lot of acting before I started wrestling. I auditioned for this play, which was made by a poet. A poet wrote a poem that was telling his life story of emigrating from Nigeria to, I think, America and then London. And his poem was so loved that they were like, hey, how about you extend this? And it's still in a poetry form, but it's just in telling your life story in so many stories. And he was like, sure, cool. So he was the first performing it on his own as a one-man show, but then he wanted to continue doing stuff with writing, and so he would find other actors to do it, audition me. I thought like being from a Nigerian background, even though I was born in London, having a Nigerian background, I could kind of resonate with the stories and do it justice. Got the part. Performed it in London, Margate for some reason, and Newcastle. And that was kind of how I ended up in Newcastle, and I ended up doing this play, which was in poetry form, 1 whole hour, and yeah, a little bit of fun before I started wrestling.
Must have helped though, having been an actor now, obviously for wrestling. It's like just being able to emote, being able to for an audience to understand what you're going through as well. Like that training must have actually come across like very, very helpful.
Yeah, I think the main thing it helps me is be confident being in front of people. Luckily, it meant that me having my first wrestling match wasn't the first time I'm going to be, kind of just vulnerable and exposing myself to all these different, like just to strangers. Having the experience of doing a lot of theatre-based stuff where I'm walking out and I'm performing, being silly, that's the main thing that it helped me with. I remember actually when I was doing rehearsals for that play, it was in Brixton, and it's in 2016. And I remember walking home from rehearsals, and there was a queue into the O2 for a Progress Wrestling show. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And at this time I had no clue, really. So that's interesting. There's a lot of people there to see. What's it say? Progress Wrestling. And here we are, full circle.
Oh wow, that's incredible. I think I was there that day for that one. It wasn't. I have to say the O2 is not set up for wrestling. Not like the Copperbox.
It's
It's
the
a kind of
balcony, right?
yeah, and it's also there's the slant, so it was up on the stage for it, so you couldn't like a lot of it for the sight lines. It wasn't great, but that's that was definitely like a important point in time. To go back into the football very very quickly, do you play FPL? Do you have any interest in fantasy league or anything like that? Or do you just not bother with it as well?
No, I don't. It's just time. I would like to like, just get fully back in because I'm only just following the season and just seeing how Newcastle are doing. I'd love to like get time to just watch Match of the Day weekly again. That was the time it was the thing to do. I know obviously Ian Wright's leaving, which is like very upsetting, but like
as an Arsenal fan, I'm gutted. Yeah,
it's gutted, man. He's just the man. But I wanna, like I used to have fantasy football. I used to play Football Manager. I was very, very much in. Football Managers are deadly. It's a dangerous cycle, and they know it is as well, which is crazy.
Amira wouldn't be happy if you started that. That's
not a chance.
No, no good comes of it.
What I'm doing.
Yeah, there's the amount of stories you will read about people who've had divorces as a result of it. It just feels like I can't go down that. Yeah. It's a tough one to go into for that. A couple of sort of like weird questions as well. And I think I asked you this in person once before. I think at the Dundee Arms. But what is on your ideal roast? If you're having a roast dinner, what's on it?
I was just talking about Scotch eggs to some Australians, whereas like my first exposure to Scotch eggs were they're being homemade by my mum at Christmas dinner. I only had them at Christmas dinner because that was pretty much when we'd have a full roast, and so I was like, that's when I have my Scotch eggs. So and they were big because she'd make them herself. They were gigantic Scotch eggs. So there'll be a Scotch eggs there on the side. big fat Yorkshire pudding. There's got to be pigs in blankets. It has to be there. I don't like Brussels sprouts, okay? I'm sorry, people who do, but I'm also judging you if you do. And then roast potatoes, gravy, carrots. Oh. And I'm adding. I've just recently started adding lamb. Before it was just roast chicken. It's got to be roast chicken. It's got to be all the trimmings. It's got to be all the trimmings. Good Toby Carvery special. I'm thinking if I'm missing anything. You tell me what you put on in that, because
I'm thinking you've got the main ones there. You've got the important stuff in there in terms of like your Yorkshire pudding, your roast potatoes. I like a caramelized carrot, but that's just me being fancy. Lamb, hey, it's horses for courses. Takes different strokes to change the world. I'm more a roast beef man myself for that. But I think you've got the main stuff in there as well. Stuffing as well.
Oh yeah, I mean stuffing.
Yeah.
Yes, there needs to be loads of stuffing and gravy. 1,000,000%.
That's spot on. I was going to ask you actually, top 5 veg.
Top 5 veg.
Weren't expecting that one, were you?
No. No. Okay, I'm gonna put carrots. Okay, I guess carrots will go. Broccoli, mushrooms is a vegetable, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mushrooms are incredible. Onions a vegetable?
Yeah. Onions are vegetables. Yeah.
That's easy then. No, yeah, onions for sure. Is that 5?
No, that's 4.
Damn it. Oh, then the last one I'll put in is sweet corn. Look at that.
Spot on, mate. Absolutely spot on for that as well. Do you have a favourite soap opera? If you are being forced to watch one, and if you do, like one, it might be one from when you were a kid, because we all get out of these things after a while. Do you have a favourite soap character?
God, okay. I didn't watch many soap operas. I tell you a blast from the past. Dream Team. I love Dream Team. I was all in on Dream Team, and one of my favourite things while watching it was trying to see which football club they were playing that they were trying to pretend was Harchester United.
Yeah.
That they just made purple. That was one of my favourite things.
Chelsea or Leicester. They'd alternate between those.
It was
depending on which one, wouldn't it? Then
which is fair. Oh man, there was a character in that. Oh man, there's a character in there who's now been on loads of stuff since then. And I forgot his name. But basically it's the main character. He wasn't the main character. He had like a goatee. He was the black. No, yeah, Fletcher, and then Fletcher as well. Fletcher, and then there was the black guy who had like a goatee, who's been on loads of stuff since then, like Holby City and stuff like that.
He's doing well. I'd need to search. I'd need to research it. People, put it down in the comments. Let us.
Put it down in the comments. Go on, please.
I was even though she's turned up in Coronation Street, Linda Block, but yeah, Dream Team's worth Linda a revival.
Block.
Yeah,
Linda Block. Yeah.
A crush I had at various points, and her husband getting shot from a sniper at the top of the stands as well.
Amount of deaths, the amount of like mass deaths as well. When entire clubs are getting wiped out.
I mean, you just sort of think if this happens in football, they just stop football for a few weeks and go, right, this club needs sorting out, isn't it? Final question, and it's always one we like to go to: okay. Brett or Sean?
Whoa! Oh! I'm gonna say Shawn Michaels. Don't tell Andy Quilden I said that, because obviously Brett's his favorite wrestler of all time.
Yeah.
But
I was wondering what's the reasoning behind it? Why Sean?
It's more because I grew up on Sean. You know, that's the thing, because I've 1,000,000% got a newfound appreciation of going back and watching a lot of Bret Hart. But Sean just had that combination of always pulling out the bag of having the best match every show, even if it was a Monday Night Raw. And there's just the combination of him being the smaller guy. I was going to say kind of a showstopper kind of guy. What the hell does that mean? But the fact that he would like dance around, but still be a serious big match wrestler. I love how he was able to do that. Be a serious big match wrestler, wrestle heavyweights, and not look out of place, whilst usually getting the best match out of literally everyone.
I was going to ask as well, like, would it be your influence for the super kick as well at the same time? You know, for sure.
Nah, that's just me being a shitty little indie wrestler. That's the only reason. I just gotta do a super kick because I'm an indie wrestler. Not really Shawn Michaels.
Well, that is brilliant. Thank you so much for your time, Michael. I absolutely love doing this. We'll need to do this again sometime in the future.
Oh,
But what have you got? Where can people find? Where can people get your stuff? What plugs have you got?
Yeah, no, I guess at the OJMO for all social media platforms, Instagram and X, and then michaeloka.com for merchandise. I'm trying my best to put out some good, interesting merchandise. I recently put out these playing cards. I know people are big on collectibles, and that's going down a treat. So
They look
michaeloka.com is
great.
where you can see. Thank you, thank you.
They're the ones that you and a mirror have got them on there, and they look great.
Yeah, and they're glossing and they're gold. So those are going down a treat. I guess I'll just plug revolutionprowrestling.com because that's where I wrestle the most. So if you want to go see their shows, on that website is where you can get ticket information. On that site is where you can sign up for training, and I take training at London School of Wrestling, so it's a good little hub for all things Michael Oku. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Michael, thank you ever so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me, JP. I really appreciate it. This is cool.
Cheers, guys.